Hey everyone, it's been a while since I've done a video. Kind of give you an update on what's been going on. Summertime is a busy time of life for me, middle of the year. I don't think much about carrying the camera with me or taking the time to record and edit and make videos. But meeting up with a good buddy this weekend up here in the foothills of the Ozark, some property that I own. And I sent him some honey back a few months ago, and we worked out a deal to where he was going to make me some mead with my honey, and he got that mead done and met up with me here at my property with another buddy of ours, and he's going to take time out of his day to drive around my property and show me what plants are useful plants. And you guys know that I've been trying to study up a little bit on foraging and better myself in that field, and Clint was nice enough to meet up with me and today. And as soon as we got here, opened the truck doors, walked into my cabin, and pointed right down at the steps. I mean, couldn't get any closer to the front steps. Some wood sorrel. And of course I recognized the plant, but I didn't know the name or that it was edible. So I kind of got a little bit of heads up on a lot of people, so much time that I spend outdoors, because I recognize these plants and know them. I just don't know about them. And that's what I'm working on studying myself. But anyway, guys, Clint's here with me. Dustin's here with me. We're going to hop on this mule. We're going to drive around. I'm going to kick in when we find something. I'm going to let Clint explain what's going on, what it's good for. I'll let Clint, you want to introduce yourself?
Howdy folks, my name is Clint Thomas. I'm from western Oklahoma. Been a wild forager or wildcrafter for about half of my life. I was taught by a Native American Indian lady there in Oklahoma, and all I'm trying to do is pass on the knowledge so that people can feed themselves in hard times, and not only feed themselves but take care of themselves with medicinal wild plants. A lot of these plants are antibiotics, anti-inflammatory, and even painkillers. So hopefully we can find plants of the necessary elements to medicate yourself with if need be in hard times. But anyway, we got some down here by the cabin, some plants that I'd like to show y'all right away. So right here is wild carrot, and this one here you've got to be real careful with identifying it. Usually there's a black little spot in the center of these wild carrots, and you can also recognize them by those little leaflets underneath the flowers. This can easily be confused with poison hemlock. The difference is how the flowers clump. Poison hemlock, there's usually small clumps like this instead of one clump like that. One identifier is that on the main stems down here, you can see the hairs. Poison hemlock doesn't have those hairs on the main stem. They have purple splotches, and if we find some, we're going to point that out and show y'all. This is wild carrot, and it has a root like a wild carrot. However, it is edible, but it's not really edible because it's very woody. But this is a medicinal. Native Americans use this as a contraceptive, and there's been research done on this that actually proved the effectiveness as birth control. And here we have common dandelion. And if you are a part of the Meat Trapper tribe, I did a submission on the Patreon podcast about this little plant right here and everything that it can do. It's a good one to know, and almost everybody can identify it. Let's go over here to the wood sorrel. This here's wood sorrel. It's an edible or a trail snack. And here are the little seed pods on it. And it looks kind of like a small little okra seed pod. Every part of this plant's edible. And it has a very tangy, lemony type flavor. Grows just about everywhere. I've seen this in Texas all the way up to Minnesota.
Guys, when Clint first pointed that wood sorrel out to me, his taste has got that lemony taste, and I grabbed the leaf, stuck it in my mouth. It wasn't an immediate lemon taste, but when I chewed into it and it sat there for a minute, I picked up that lemon taste. A very unique taste, and it brought back a memory. I've had this before. I've tasted that very same taste before. Don't know from where. And something to think on was in my younger years, my grandparents are out in the woods, and someone at some point had pointed out wood sorrel to me, and I tried it, but not having the interest in it at the time, I didn't stick with it or learn it. But I found that to be interesting.
This right here is narrow leaf plantain. This is an edible plant, and it's a medicinal plant. This will stop bleeding, and it's a healing plant. So if you have like a wound from surgery, you can make a salve out of this, or you can make a poultice in emergency. You just take this leaf, fold it up, chew it up in your mouth, apply it to the wound, and it'll stop the bleeding right away.
All right, guys, I'm catching back up with them here, and I know what they found here. This is something I talked about in that video that I did at my house when I was walking around it. I'm gonna go ahead and let Clint explain what it is, and Clint, I'm gonna give you this badger tool too. I know you got one ordered, hadn't got it in yet.
Yeah.
Put that thing on your belt, man. Use it today. Let's do
I don't have enough room.
Oh man, we put it on. I'll put it on my belt, and when you see something that pertains to it and can be used, used for, let's do a little test for Cal.
Alrighty.
And show this tool. This actually, I think. I don't know if you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, Clint, but I think he made 6 of these, and it's the very first time he's made them.
5.
5.
Yeah, he made 5 first go around.
So I got one of the very first of the 5 that he's ever made, and we're gonna put this thing to a test today and see if we can.
Funny story about these. So whenever I met up with Cal last year, I had a cheap store bought. These are called hori horis. These are Japanese gardening knives. And I had one that I bought at a hardware store, and I don't remember what brand. I think it was a Fisker's brand. And whenever I met up with Cal, I brought that to him, and I'm like, hey, do you think you could build something like this a little bit heavier duty that doesn't have any flex in the blade? And this is what Cal come up with. This is heavy duty.
There you go, guys.
That is nice. Yeah, I'll be ready to put that thing through its paces.
Just Japanese is mentioned, and this man right here's got a lot of experience with that. You got anything to add to it, or?
Japanese knives are always insane, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just here to learn today. I gotta learn everything back stateside now.
All right, guys, we'll get back to it up here. Let Clint tell you what this vine is here.
So this is a wild grape, or what people around these parts call muscadine grapes. Of course, the berries are not ripe yet, but it looks like it's growing from a tree, but it's a vine that actually grows up the tree, and you can see the main vine growing right up through there.
Okay. Right, here's the root system, guys. In that last video I did, I was showing them at the house, and the vines were actually even bigger. But what these things, sorry to butt in, Clint, but what these things do, they start out in these shaded forests, and they're so shaded out that they grow thick bottoms to support them, and they climb up these trees to the canopy top, and that's where they receive the sunlight and stuff and able to grow the berries, and that's where your fruit will be. Around these parts where we're at, you can find some that are reachable, you can get to, like these would be harvestable, we could get. If they're in the very top of this tree, we wouldn't be able to. And what we'll do is when they ripen, they're gonna fall to the ground, and you can pick them up on the ground once they're ripe. But you have to beat the critters to them, because every critter in the woods loves eating those things too. Birds, coyotes, foxes, anything we trap, coons, everything's gonna be after these same berries. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're fine. Right down here we found a what people around here call cedar trees. They're actually junipers, and this tree right down here has berries growing on it, so that means that it's a female tree. And we're going to show you these berries real quick. These are the berries here, and you can make a tea out of these. They have a lot of tannins in them. What I like to do with these berries, I'm a hunter, I like deer meat and other wild game. I'll dry these berries out and I'll put them in a food processor where I can put them in like a shaker, or you can just use them whole and season wild game meat with this.
Who knew, guys? This is an old cedar tree. I've seen these berries my whole life. I've been around them almost every time I'm in the woods here. And this is a cedar tree, like Clint said. But the technical name, this is where the difficulty I've found when I've tried to start foraging. And I see something right behind this thing we've got to point out too in a minute, guys. Just standing here talking, I was looking around and seen it. But I didn't know there's any. The cedar tree's useless to me. I mean, besides making a cubby set for a bobcat or something. I had no idea these berries were useful. See what I see behind it there, Clint?
Yes, sir.
I bet you everybody around these parts are going to know what this is. Every kid grew up outdoors was picking these things when they got ripe.
Yeah. So what are they? Are they dewberries or are they blackberries?
We call them blackberries.
Yeah.
But I'm learning real quick that what I call something isn't necessarily what a man from western Oklahoma calls something.
Yeah. See, I call them blackberries too, but you know, I found what I thought were blackberries a couple weeks ago, and a tribe member on Telegram informed me that they were dewberries.
Yep.
So
this is one. To me, it's fascinating being able to get with Clint today. I've always found this fascinating, but within the first 10 minutes of being here with Clint, guys, it's just opened my eyes to the possibilities that I knew was already there. There's a little muscadine.
Yep.
Muscadine vine poking up there behind these. So right here in this one area, there's 3 edible, useful plants that most people know nothing about.
Found some other wild berries right down here too.
More blackberries, guys, are all, and that's where we find them down here in these parts. A lot of times when you got a clearing or a fence row and a hard, thick wood area, they're going to be on those wood lines and those fence rows.
This here's sumac, and they're starting to develop the berries. And whenever these things are fully developed, they'll be about the size of a BB, and they almost look like a cluster of grapes upside down. You know, they'll be pointing up instead of down. But I would use these berries for seasoning fish, chicken, quail, pheasant, any kind of game bird, even duck. They kind of have a lemony flavor, kind of like what the wood sorrel does. But yeah, food processor these things and turn them into something you can put in the salt and pepper shaker, and it's good to go.
And this tree doesn't get much bigger than this either, does it, Clint? Aren't they?
This is actually huge to me, because in Oklahoma they don't get this big.
Right.
In western Oklahoma they get maybe as tall as I am, so a little over 6 feet.
I just got a whole patch of them here, guys. I mean, just sitting here, just real quick, I see at least 3, 4, 5 of them in this little cluster here.
Alrighty, folks. Here we have a oak tree, and in the fall, this thing's going to be putting on acorns and dropping acorns. As most y'all know, deer love acorns. But in western Oklahoma, I've actually made bread from acorns. And what you do, you have to leach the acorns to get the tannic acid out of them. But once that's done, you can grind it up into flour, and you can mix with regular white flour or wheat flour and make a bread out of it. A couple years ago, I did a segment on the podcast on how to make a redneck hummus. Chris found us a wild onion here. Season for these are almost over, but these little seeds right here, the head will get heavy and it'll fall over like this to the ground, and those seeds will take root for next year's crops. There's a bulb of it. Of course, in the prime, it's a lot bigger than that. But what this bulb does, it stores up energy to put on these seeds for next year's crops.
Guys, before we leave too, when Clint first got here, one of the very first things he did was open his cooler up and pulled out 4 or 5 different jars of food.
Yeah.
And it was, one of them was the seed of this onion plant here. And I don't know, can't think of the words to describe it. It was good.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, what I did, you can take these seed heads and you can bust them up and you get those little bitty seeds like that. And all I did was put them in a pickling brine and left them in the refrigerator. Hell, they've been in there now for a month. But yeah, they're like miniature little pickled onions.
yeah, before we finish the day, guys, I'm gonna get some footage of that cooler and those jars of that food. I ain't lying to you, it was unbelievable, the flavor, taste, and how good they were. I mean, better than anything store-bought. I mean, no question whatsoever. And Dustin's just sitting behind the camera, just shaking his head.
Very rich, very, very rich in flavor. You just don't get that at the store at all.
All right, guys, we're just wandering our way through here, and I just got to point it out real quick. Hopefully the camera will pick it up, but we're hunting for food, and I'm a trapper, and I can't help but notice this game trail coming down through here. Hopefully you guys will be able to see it on camera. You can tell you can just tell where the leaves have been stepped on over and over and over, matted down. The twigs are broke up into pieces, and it's almost just a real slight indention. If you're around cattle area, you're going to know what I'm talking about, because those cows use the same trail over and over, and they'll beat that earth down to where it makes a little trough or a valley. Every raccoon, every fox, every coyote, every deer, every bobcat, at one point has come down this same trail. And the reason they're working this trail, guys, is because of this big ditch right over here. Water is a source of life. And all your frogs, your lizards, your mice are going to be up under these tree roots, like in that high bank under that tree leaning out there. And these predators are over there hunting those animals. That's their food source. Food, water, and sex are the 3 things that motivate those animals. And this trail provides all those things right here in this area.
And most all of your wild edible plants have got to have at least a full day of sunlight.
That's why I just asked Clint, guys, and then I kicked the camera on real quick. We're standing here on this trail, and I asked him, I said, do you ever find any kind of edible plants in this thick, shaded area like this? And that's what he was explaining to me when I turned the camera on. They need sunlight.
Yeah,
so
at least a full day. That's the reason why you find so much of your wild edible plants in your bar ditches, because they're long tree lines alongside the road, but they also get a lot of sunlight and a lot of moisture along those ways. And too, I was telling you about the mullein patch on that right of way for the highline poles. I mean, it's wide open. Nothing's blocking the sun. So there's the tree line. They're just right inside of it.
right. Well, I would think. I mean, there's an exception to every rule, and you could stumble across. Like, this is where I wouldn't be afraid to hunt for morel mushrooms and something like this, But if we were out here this time of year that we're here looking for plants, we would be wasting our time if we were in something like this time of year.
Generally, yeah. Yeah, like I said, I mean, me and Tim, we found some bergamot inside of a tree, bunch of trees like this, real heavy forested area that didn't have a lot of sunlight. That was just kind of a fluke deal,
Right. I've been noticing on Telegram too, some of the guys have been finding some mushrooms.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's neither I nor Clint are we know of mushrooms. I know a couple of mushrooms that I trust myself that I could harvest and eat, but I'm not familiar enough with mushrooms to just grab something, stick in my mouth and eat. That could be the last thing you ever do. Yeah. But I know some of the guys on Telegram channel are finding some mushrooms in areas like this. So that's why it's important to me to learn all you can about everything you can.
Well, like the old saying goes, there's old foragers and there's bold foragers, but there's no old bold foragers.
That probably pertained to a mushroom at one point in time, didn't it?
I don't mind, I just don't like talking.
All right, guys. He wouldn't do. I tried to get him to get up here and point this out since he found them. But I mean, this right here is a perfect example why I love getting out and exploring the outdoors, guys. Look what the water pushed up here, and this is actually a few years old. You can tell where the squirrels and stuff have ate on it. Squirrels, once those deer shed, those squirrels can get some nutrients that are left in that growth.
Yep. Calcium.
Yep, calcium, Clint says.
That's pretty cool.
He wouldn't talk about them, but he gets to take them home with him. He found them. I think what happened, guys, just thinking on that, we've had quite a bit of rain. We're in a big valley system here, this pond is, and you can tell where the water got pushing up through here, all this debris and stuff. So if you're out antler hunters, here's a tip for you if you like getting out and hunting for sheds. This valley stretches for miles up here, this one valley. So every bit of that water after a big rain pushes right down here into this debris, and that's what happened. That horn got caught up in this debris. So if you're out hunting in the spring, summer months for sheds, get in your valleys where those floods push the water and find your debris and look around them. Find your deer shed. Food source, guys. I guarantee you there's some brim out here if you had a fishing pole.
Yeah. That aquatic plant right there, the stems almost look like purslane. Purslane has that red tint to it. And it's real low growing to the ground like that. It'd be nice if we could find some of that plantain, but that's definitely not it.
Now, Clint, you just mentioned it looks like plantain. How important is it to know 100% sure that what you're getting is what you think it is?
Well, like Tim always says, everything's edible at least once. I mean, you know, there some stuff is mildly poisoned, some of it's mildly toxic, you know. It might just give you a little upset stomach and some diarrhea or whatever, but you know, it only takes that one time that if you can't identify something 100%, just like that wild carrot and poisoned hemlock. I mean, it only takes 4 or 5 leaves of poisoned hemlock to kill a grown man. I mean, so it's vitally important to know what you're looking at.
I know one important piece of equipment you mentioned too, as soon as we got here, that you forgot was your book identification field guide. So then that's important.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of edible plants. I don't know them all. I mean, hell, I doubt anybody does. But you know, a good field guide is very vital, especially whenever you're out here like we are and you don't have any kind of cell reception, and you know you can't check any kind of identification app or anything like that. But you know, and we have found plants that none of us knew, and hell, we'd like to know what it was, and you know, a field guide comes in handy for that.
Yeah.
Not all field guides are going to have everything listed in it, but you know.
Right. I mean, in today's age, everybody's got a cell phone.
Right.
Take a picture of it, pull it up on that, tells you what it is.
Yeah.
But would you trust that every time?
No. I mean, even whenever I'm using that app in my backyard, you know, and I don't have just one field guide. I have several that you can reference stuff. And some field guides might have more information on the plant that another field guide has missed out on. So
Right.
I think it's very vital to have at least, you know, 3 or 4 field guides.
Deal. So our option today, if we didn't know, just take a picture with our phone, get back up to the cabin, look at our field guide, be sure to identify it before we come down here and harvest, do anything with
And
it.
something else about this aquatic plant, you know, it has yellow flowers on it, and so does purslane. You know, I mean, it's crazy how much this looks like purslane. Of course, the leaves on purslane, it's like almost like a cactus. It's like a thick, leathery, succulent type. If anybody knows what a jade plant or a jade tree looks like and how thick the leaves are, that's kind of like what the leaves on a purslane plant look like.
No idea. Willow.
This is a white willow tree. The active ingredient from aspirin comes from this.
Really?
Yep. I'll show you how you can use it. Got a headache. You out in the woods. Take that.
Chew on it.
You can chew on it, or you can steep it in a cup of hot water.
And that's just the bark, right?
Just the bark. The the active ingredient is right there in the inside lining of the bark. And you just make you a tea out of that and drink it to get rid of your headache. Nature's aspirin. White willows. I'm sure you could probably do it with the leaves too. Yeah, it's still pretty cheap.
One day a bottle of aspirin could be 20, 30 bucks.
And it could be 100.
How easy was that right there to cure a headache?
Yep. Good information to know. Make sure this is right. I think it is. And it looks like it, but it almost looks like prickly lettuce. Prickly lettuce has little spines that grow down that. And it may be a variant of it, but I don't know. We'll see what we can find.
All right, change of scenery, guys. We decided to come down here. Supposedly, this cave that you're looking at right here is the first documented school in Arkansas, and we're just out here checking out the beautiful scenery. Clint's going to point out and show us some stuff we can find on these bluffs.
What we got here, guys, is a Jerusalem artichoke. Grows tubers in the ground kind of like a potato. Best to harvest after the first frost, otherwise it contains a chemical known inulin, causes gas and stomach upset. But you definitely want to cook these to help get rid of the inulin as well. You eat these things raw, you'll probably be farting like a pack mule. And Chris, this one here that you got a hold of, I'm not 100% certain, but I think that is goldenrod, which is a medicinal, and it helps take care of hay fevers and allergies.
I actually grabbed that thinking they were the same. Now I look at them, I know I was mistaken. But yeah, that's just me, just first glance. I mean, there's no, when you actually look at it, it's obvious that they're not.
Right, but feel this leaf,
and
then feel the leaf on this Jerusalem artichoke.
Yep, yep, big difference.
Yep.
And of course, just at first glance, the one's got the yellow flower on top and the other one doesn't.
Yep. Yeah, and the majority of the time, the center of these flowers will have a brown center, but not always. It just depends on the variety of the artichoke.
Guys, Clint, this is one of the first plants that we identified, and he mentioned it, and we just spotted another one.
I'd mentioned about the black spot being in the center of the flower. It looks kind of like a black bug, but it's part of the flower. That's another way of identifying wild carrots.
You will.
This here's clover. Most of you guys, if y'all are any kind of hunters, know what that is. I mean, deer eat that stuff all the time. And a lot of people think that wood sorrel and clover is the same thing, and it's not. Wood sorrel has the heart-shaped leaves. Clover's got the oval shape, but it's these white markings on the leaves. That's how you identify it.
What's the name of it?
That's narrow leaf plantain.
All right, guys, we were just driving down the road, and I thought we were about to wreck. And Clint spotted this right here, so he turned around, come back to it, and I'm gonna let him tell you what it is.
This is prickly lettuce or wild lettuce. And this is a medicinal plant used to make a pain reliever. A lot of people call it opium lettuce. To me, it's more like a high-powered ibuprofen, but it does work. You can identify it by the spines going down this main vein here on the leaf, and by the sap that it excretes. And this is where you find your medicine from. That white sap is where the medicinal properties are of this plant. And it's edible, but it's bitter.
Do you usually find it in big clumps like this?
Yeah, back home, you always find it in big groups like this. in western Oklahoma, it won't get near this tall. But, you know, I mean, at least shoulder height to me.
Nice, so this is a good find.
Yeah, this is a good find. And then over here, we found some curly dock.
Right here, several of them.
Yeah, there you go.
Clump here and a clump as we stepped out of the truck.
Yeah, right there in the mix of all them wild carrots. Hold on now. That's not all wild carrot.
That's why it's important to know.
Well,
you talked about the bundles earlier. Now you can explain the difference, can't you?
Yeah. Wild carrot. I'm not sure what that is, but usually whenever the flowers look like that, it's a poisonous plant. And normally something like this, I don't touch, but. So if this was growing amongst these plants, and I was wanting to forage for curly dock seeds to make flour out of, or even the leaves, I wouldn't harvest from this group because of this plant right here.
And you're just not just because you can't identify, it may be poison, not worth the chance.
Right. Well, the pollen.
Yeah.
From this plant could be on that plant.
Yep. Perfect sense.
And the poisonous properties from this plant could be all over that, and you don't know.
And we just saw I thought it was a honeybee, but I just saw a bee come down here. It wasn't a honeybee, but perfect example. That bee land here collect pollen, land there and collect pollen. So,
Yep.
Right here, guys. That's I'm gonna somebody correct me, but I believe that's what we call red vine.
It's called what?
Red vine, I believe. See how it's got the purple tint to the vine? The reason I'm familiar with it is because my honeybees, this is a good nectar, pollen, honey resource around where I live for the honeybees. It's called red vine.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
To know the medicinal purposes and stuff of it, I don't know, but I do know the honeybees, when this is flowered, the honeybees will completely cover this up. There's some of the seed pods on it there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, just on the side of the road, guys. I'm going to take credit for this one. This is one I know and I spotted. This is an elderberry, but I'm going to let you, Clint, tell you. And if you can see, guys, there is some bugs flying around and collecting resources from it. I'm going to let Clint tell you what it's good for because he knows more than I.
All right, folks. Like Chris said, this is elderberry. I use elderberry flowers to make vinegar out of. The berries can be made into a wine, a jelly, a sauce for game meats. It's also a medicinal plant. The berries are a immune booster. Make jellies out of the berries as well. But it's just one of those good plants to know.
Look here, guys. We've been out in the woods all day driving around. We decided to come to a city park to just walk around here in the middle of town. All these people, trucks up here, and right as we pull into this park, look out here in the window. All this field is completely covered with curly dock as far as we can see.
What we got here, guys, is some amaranth. Just a wild edible green. Cook it up kind of like spinach. The seeds, you can use it kind of like a quinoa. And then right here next to this is a small burdock plant. Probably been mowed down several times, but anyway, another wild edible. This is broadleaf plantain. Earlier at Chris's cabin, we found the narrow leaf. And this is broadleaf, but all plantains you can identify whenever you flip the leaf over and it's got the 5 veins right there.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yep. And those plants that we found at your cabin that I thought were broadleaf plantain only had 3 or 4.
Okay.
I mean, it looked very similar, but there's always going to be 5 on plantain. Even narrow leaf plantain will have 5 of those veins.
All right. Are there seeds when they mature?
Yeah.
They're seeds?
Yeah, these are the seed stalks. Yeah. But you can use this just like you can narrow leaf plantain. You know, it's an edible plant. It's a medicinal. You know, it's a coagulant. Used to thicken blood, stop bleeding. So, good one to know.
Guys, this right here is when we done all that foraging. I know I mentioned it, we were down there around the pond, but man, I tasted every bit of this, and not any of it was better than stuff you can buy at the grocery store. But
this right here, Chris, is wild garlic scapes that have been pickled. That's basically the tops of garlic plants whenever they start going to seed. These little conical shaped deals at the top will put on seed and flour. But you can take these and you can make a pesto out of this, or you can pickle them. That's the only two ways I usually use these. And whenever the scapes go to seed, this is kind of what you get. These are wild onion seeds from those scapes. Again, those are wild garlic, and this is wild onions. These are the wild onion scapes. And again, these can be made into a pesto. You can use these in the soup to help flavor it. I mean, all this is really good stuff. And then this right here is Chris's favorite. A lot of people going to scratch their heads, wonder what that is. But this is wild yucca flower buds. And I kind of cured these like you would capers that grow in the Mediterranean. And you can kind of see how they have the white spots on them, just like real capers do. But you salt cure these and just keep them in salt water. These aren't really fermented. You know, fermented, you put them in the salt water and they start to bubble. And that's how it's preserved. But these, whenever you put salt on them, it's like meat. It'll draw the moisture out of it. But you pour the moisture off, and that's how it's salt cured. And then once they're salt cured, then I add salt water to it, and that keeps it cured too. But I also season these with wild garlic. I don't know if I can find any more in here.
On this right here, Clint, you know, around here we don't have that yucca growing wild, but what we do have is I noticed it in a bunch of flower beds and in people's gardens, and it's the same. Is that the same as the wild plant?
There's several different species and subspecies of yucca, and they are basically the same. I mean, there's some differences and stuff. I'm sure you could preserve it basically the same as far as the flower buds. Whenever these things do go to flower, you can cook the flower petals like a boiled cabbage, and that's really good. You know, the stalks that these grow from, whenever they're coming up from the yucca plant, looks like a giant stalk of asparagus, and all of it's edible. So I mean, you could preserve the stalks, you could cook the stalks. You know, I mean, you could do all kinds of things with them.
Talking about flavoring it, you gave me this when we first met up. Is this some of the garlic salt, wild garlic salt you used to?
This is wild garlic salt, and the way that I make this, I don't dry the garlic first. How I do it, I put the salt and the fresh garlic plant, and it's a whole plant. All I do is I wash the plant, cut off the roots, any yellow parts of the leaves, I cut that off, and I throw the garlic plant and the salt and the food processor blender, and I blend it together, and then I'll spread it out on like a paper plate and let it dry for a couple of days. And every so often I'll take a fork and I'll kind of break it up, and this right here is what you get. I mean, the salt dries the garlic out, you know, and then of course you're letting the air dry it out too. But I find it better, it has a better flavor when you do it that way than drying the garlic out first.
That's something I'm really excited, because we use a lot of garlic, store-bought garlic salt at the house. It's one of our major seasonings on a lot of food. So I'm really excited about giving this a try.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff smells.
Oh yeah,
it smells awesome. Really good, strong pungent.
And there's something else you gave me here too, sitting here on the tailgate. You want to talk about both those?
Yeah, this is a hot sauce, and this is made out of a. They're called chili patine or chili pekin or some shit like that, but they're a little bitty pepper, and they grow wild on the side of roads down there in western Oklahoma. Extremely hot and spicy. But all I do here is I dry the peppers out, put it in the food processor or blender with any kind of vinegar. You can use white vinegar, apple cider vinegar, But in this situation, what I used was some homemade vinegar, and this is elderflower vinegar. And the way you make the vinegar, it's kind of a process, but basically you make a wine out of the elderflowers with, I mean, it's like anything else, sugar, yeast, and water, and some kind of fruit or flour, and you let it ferment into a wine, and then you let fruit flies convert it into a vinegar. And that's what this is, and that's what we made this hot sauce out of. But this stuff right here, it's gonna light you up, man. It's hot.
Yeah, that's what amazing me. You know, I always knew it, but it never really hit home until Clint told me how this vinegar was made. You know, a lot of our natural stuff, it's exactly that. It's natural. Like the bee honey. Everybody loves natural honey, but a lot of people don't realize that bees regurgitate and eat and regurgitate and eat. And
Yeah.
same thing with this
Kind of a
vinegar.
byproduct.
Yeah, this vinegar is the same thing. The fruit flies doing it. The fruit flies, actually, you're not keeping it out of
Right.
the mixture. You're actually wanting them to go into the mixture, eat it, regurgitate it,
Yeah.
and do their thing.
And actually, some of this stuff is actually sweetened with some of that honey that you sent me too. These are, I know for sure. This doesn't have any sweetener in it. But this, yeah, these three do, and that's kind of what gives it that amber color,
Right.
in the pickling liquid. Then last but not least, that's in the wild edible plant, but it's seasoned with wild edible plants. This is flavored with the wild onion seeds and wild garlic leaves. And what this is American buffalo heart that's been pickled. And this was actually sweetened with some of your honey as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was some good stuff too when we tried it. You know, a
Nice
lot
and
of people, when you mention liver and heart and eating it, a lot of people are going to curl their lip up at you and not even give it a
Right.
try. But actually, that was some of the preferred meat by our ancestors that has the most nutrients, is the heart and the liver,
Yeah.
those internal organs.
Yeah, back in the old days, I mean, for pregnant women, you know, whenever people would come back from a hunt, the pregnant women were given the liver because it was considered the most nutritious, you know, for their unborn children.
Yeah.
Yeah, organ meats are fantastic, and I love a good pickled heart.
Right. And this, the texture, you know, like my wife, when I cook that stuff up, it's the texture of cooking it she doesn't like.
Right.
But but if that's the case, say you can't eat it because of the texture, try it this way, because that's a totally different texture than just frying it in a pan.
Yeah, normally, you know, a heart is tough because that muscle is sitting there working nonstop. I mean, even whenever the body's at rest, that heart's working, constantly pumping. So it makes it tough. But the acids in the vinegar break down the connective tissues in this and really make it really tender. I mean, I canned this up maybe 2 months ago. So those acids have been in there working that tenderizing that meat, and it's fantastic.
That's one thing that always gets me is we talk about a lot of people that hunt, they tell you that they hunt for the meat, but yet when they cut that meat up or they process the animal, all those internal organs get left out there for the coyotes and stuff.
Yeah, they just throw it in the gut pile with the hide.
So, I mean, if that's something you've never experimented with or done, try this method. That's going to, how many meals? I'd say a heart would give you at least 2 meals probably. And a liver too.
This is only half of that bison heart. And I've even got the bison liver at home, and the rest of the heart, and the bison's tongue. I'm going to make what the Spanish call lengua, or beef tongue tacos. Really good. You boil that and you skin it. You take that skin off the tongue and then chop it up. You can smoke it. I mean, smoked lengua is awesome. If you smoke it with hickory or mesquite, it's fantastic.
Right. And that's one thing that stuck out with me with us running around these last couple of days is all the stuff that the normal person's never thought of, you know, and it's so much food out here. Even the food we know of, if you sit down and think about it, there's just like the deer, the bison, the pig, the stuff that we eat all the time, the meat of that's normal, but all that internal meat that most people don't think about, and it's the most healthiest. Same thing with all this that we're harvesting out here, just growing out here in nature. I mean, you walk by it every day, yet you don't know that it's food. Yeah. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, like I was telling you yesterday, you know, whenever me and Kim met up in Evansville, we went to the park there, and there was wild onions and wild garlic and several other wild edibles that was growing everywhere. And there was people all in this park. Walking around fishing in this little pond. You know, I mean, we saw the fattest squirrel I'd ever seen in my life at this park. And people didn't pay any mind to it. And it was like that field that we saw yesterday of the curly dock. People walk past it every day and they don't think anything of it. They just don't know that it's food.
Right. Well, that's something hopefully, and that was my goal making this video. I originally didn't even think about bringing a camera, but I was hoping, I knew Clint was going to teach me a lot of stuff personally, but I was hoping that we could put together a video. And I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff, and I think I'm going to be able to put together a good video to help you guys learn. You guys that are subscribed, hopefully, can pick something up. You know, you're not going to be able to go out here and identify every one of these plants, and it's not going to be successful the first time. But pick out one or two that you're interested in and go out and learn those one or two. And in the process of doing that, that's going to motivate you to start learning more, picking up more, getting an interest in it. And I'm going to do that myself personally because I've got a lot of growth in this area that I need to do. But hopefully you guys were able to pick something else useful out of this video that'll help you guys too. So Clint, appreciate you coming, man.
You bet, man.
I enjoyed it tremendously.
Glad you had me down.
Hopefully we can do it again one day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hopefully next time we can bring my son out here. He'd really get a kick out
No
of it.
doubt. Yeah. Those kids are what us old men are gonna have to depend on in the future.
Yeah.
So hopefully
Yep.
we can.
Yep, for sure.